everyone, welcome back to my channel. For any newcomers, welcome. In today's video, I'm going to show you how you can DIY your own home decor. So in our house, we have a rock fireplace, and it's actually more of a stacked stone fireplace. And for the summertime, I wanted something bright and vibrant, colorful, but yet calming and serene to go on the mantle for display, some sort of artwork. But everywhere I looked, I found beautiful paintings and pictures and whatnot. It just wasn't what I was looking for. And so I just created my own. And I know that you can do it too. It is super fun because, again, you're making it to match your home decor, your home style, and probably at a fraction of the cost, to be honest, although I did wind up using quite a lot of epoxy. um, but it was fun, and I'm going to share that with you guys today. So I'm super, super excited for us to jump in and get started on this DIY home decor. Okay, getting right into this. This is a piece of wood that I've had lying around for like forever. I am not even sure what type of wood that it is, but I went ahead and spray painted it white and placed some painter's tape around the edges just to prevent the epoxy from spilling over the sides and onto the back of the board. I then went ahead and mixed up 8 ounces of epoxy. I split that into 2 cups, so it's about 4 ounces, and put some gold mica powder in one of the cups with the epoxy and just mix that up. This is going to be the sand portion of the beach themed home decor piece. So I'm just going to pour that onto my board, and then I'm going to follow that up with placing some crushed glass pieces onto the bottom, just to sort of mimic sand particles or seashells, and also just to give it some zhuzh. Once I poured the epoxy on, you can see I'm just kind of smoothing it out with my popsicle stick, and I didn't realize there was a hole in the board and some of the epoxy was leaking out, dripping through the hole. But, this was my first home decor piece, so it was definitely a learning experience. Also, I used about 4 different brands of epoxy on this piece because I started out with one particular brand, and I do get some sort of allergic reaction when I use that particular brand. So I just kind of wanted to use that up and be done with it. So I am wearing my sleeves here just to keep that allergic reaction from occurring. So once I ran out of that, then I moved on to J Diction epoxy, and I'll have that linked in the description box below. And I also used Flynn Sisters Supply Shop epoxy. So I believe it was 3, I guess it was just 3 different brands of epoxy with this particular project. But anyway, moving on. So you can see I have my first bit of epoxy and crushed glass, and I'm just using my torch to pop any bubbles that might form. And then I'm going to go ahead and add some more mica powder to the other half of the epoxy, and I'm going to go ahead and pour that on as well. And I know you're probably thinking, why didn't you just, you already had 8 ounces mixed up. Why didn't you just put the mica powder in the 8 ounces and do it that way? Again, this was my first piece of artwork like this. I have decorated acrylic blanks and things like that, but I had never produced a piece of this size, and I just didn't know how much epoxy it would actually take. So that's why initially I split them up into 2 cups. I didn't want to use the whole 8 ounces if that was going to be too much for the sand portion of the design. I didn't want to have like this huge amount of sand colored epoxy and really not be able to use it all. So, my suggestion when first working with any kind of epoxy project, if you are unsure of how much epoxy you're going to need, my suggestion is just you can mix up 8 ounces and then split it up before adding any colorants or alcohol inks or anything else to it. Now, if you're just doing clear epoxy, then yeah, I mean, you can mix up the whole cup and you're probably going to use it depending on your project. But that is why I then had to turn around and add more mica powder to the second cup of epoxy. And so I just want to clarify that to those who are wondering, why didn't she just do that to begin with? Okay, so you can see I've gone ahead and added that second cup of 4 ounces of epoxy to the bottom of the board, and I have mixed up another 8 ounces of epoxy with a sort of like a greenish blue mica powder mixed in. And that is going to be representative of our ocean. We're also going to take some more epoxy and add some white mica powder to that cup, and that's going to be the waves that we create that will be crashing onto the sand. Okay, so I have placed the white epoxy at the border of the sand, and now I'm just spraying it with some wave white. The wave white is going to help create our waves. So once I spray that, I'm just going to use my heat gun and push it around, and it will start to form cells, so to speak, and that is going to give us our wave look. Now, I've also mixed up some epoxy with this darker green. This is reminiscent of a place that my husband and I and our kids visited many years ago called Emerald Isle. It was the greenest water I've ever seen, and I thought about that, so I wanted to add some more green tones before I added the blue ocean. So that's what I'm doing here. this is the second piece of wood. They're pretty much the same size. And again, I'm not sure where I got this wood. And, I've had it for quite some time. It was just lying around in my craft room. I kind of wanted the pieces to be a little bit, I wish they had been a little bit wider. But, again, this was just something I had lying around and I wanted to use. So So I already have the sides taped off and the ends, and I've just sprinkled my crushed glass on. This crushed glass is bigger chunks than what was used in the beach themed decor piece. So I've just kind of spread those out the way I want, and now I'm just pouring some epoxy on top of them to, of course, hold them in place. And then this will establish sort of our border for the design that I want to do on this one, because this one is not going to be like the beach themed. This one is completely different. So now we are going to add some more crushed glass. This is actually more like shards of glass, just little slivers in sort of like this rose pink color and this like turquoisey blue. And we're just going to add those around on either side of the gold crushed glass and just sort of make maybe like a geode or marble look. I don't know. I was just winging it as far as the design. I knew what colors I wanted to use and I knew what I wanted to do, but I'm not really sure like what it's called, if there's a technical term for it or um, a particular design. I don't know. But once I applied my epoxy, I went ahead and ran my torch across it to, of course, pop any bubbles, micro bubbles that might form. And and then we're going to go ahead and jump back over to the beach themed piece. And you can see it has cured. And look how beautiful and shiny. I mean, this just to me looks so good. And we are ready to add our top layer of epoxy. And it too is going to be blue, but I sort of kind of wanted it to look more like the sky rather than the water. So you will see when I apply the epoxy that there's a little bit lighter color of blue, and I sort of make like almost a sweeping motion so that it sort of looks like clouds rolling. You'll see here in a second, but we're going to go ahead and wipe this down with some alcohol just to remove any debris that might have fallen overnight. I did have this covered with a clear container, but once I move the container, we do have two indoor cats, so you just never know. So we're going to go ahead and wipe that down with rubbing alcohol and then go ahead and tape our edges once again with some painter's tape. And I failed to mention that before the epoxy had cured, I removed the painter's tape from the piece, and once it had cured, I did go ahead and sand the edges. That's very important. If you do not remove the painter's tape, it could cure to your project. And although it can be removed with some sanding, that does take a lot of elbow grease and time. So don't forget to remove the painter's tape before the epoxy cures. And also make sure that you're working on a level surface. I tried to make sure that this piece was level before starting on this project, but I don't know, for some reason on this particular epoxy pour, it did start just flowing really heavily off to the sides. And then, especially when I went in with my heat gun, that just kind of made it worse because it heated the epoxy up and made it kind of run. So it was kind of a hot mess. But I just sort of went ahead and kind of let gravity take hold, and I moved the board back and forth a little bit, but I did wind up having to apply some other coats of epoxy on top of this one because of how much epoxy did run off. So for this board, I went ahead and took some old pieces of wood and put them to the top and to the bottom and to the sides of this board to just sort of hold in that epoxy to prevent it from leaking off like the first board had done. So again, I think when I first started this project, they were level. I think the boards were level. I think as they sat, the wood may have started to bow or warp a little bit. I'm not sure. But we've really had some very humid days here, and I don't know if that had any effect on it. But nonetheless, I did go ahead and add some more of the crushed glass to the top of this board. I know it's hard to see in this frame. I apologize. And then we added some more of the pink and blue glass shards to the top as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and let this footage play through, but I am going to speed it up for you because it is quite lengthy. But I wanted to go ahead and let the footage play out so that you can see the process. So for this next step, I have mixed up some epoxy and I have sprinkled some gold glitter in with the epoxy, and I'm just taking a syringe and sucking that glitter and epoxy up in the syringe, and I'm going to squeeze that out alongside of the blue and pink glass shards. Now, once I had that completed, I felt like it was just too sparse. I wanted the bottom to stay white, but I felt like that middle portion was just a little too sparse. And we have gray painted walls. So I wanted to incorporate some gray. So I went ahead and applied some alcohol ink to the middle of the board in just sort of this random crazy circular type pattern, um, just to pull in, like I said, just to pull in that gray that is throughout our house. And unfortunately, I'm not sure what happened to the video footage of this part. Um, I don't know if I just didn't record it or it somehow got overlooked or deleted. I'm not sure. So I apologize for that. But um, on the next step, I know I didn't videotape it. I actually just started working on it and failed to start my camera. But it was just simply cutting out some flowers out of this metallic rose gold vinyl and just placing them in the center there. I wanted to again bring in that rose gold, pinkish type color um, that we have in our area rug in this room, and also in some flowers that we have in a vase on the on the hearth. And so once I placed the gray alcohol ink, I did like it better because it filled in all of that white, but I felt like it was a little too chaotic looking. So I wanted to bring in some calmness on over top of that chaos, so to speak. So again, I just cut some flowers out of vinyl and transferred those onto the board. And normally I would do another coat of epoxy to seal that vinyl in if I were making this for a customer. But for us, for our home, I didn't seal it. I just left it on top as is because, I thought I may want to change that out later on down the road. And if I don't seal it in, then I can just remove them and add something else or add some words. I had thought at one point I might put because grace on there. So, and I'm sorry, my cat, I don't know what he's doing, but he's acting crazy. So I'm sorry for that noise. Um, but again, if I were making it for a customer, I would put another coat of epoxy to seal the vinyl. But since it's for us, I did not add any more epoxy, so this project is done. So I hope you enjoyed this project. I hope you enjoyed this video. I don't know what was going on with some of the tapping and thumping in the background throughout this video. I don't even know what that was. Um, so I don't know. I know it had stormed some during the recording of this, and maybe that's what it was. Um, but I appreciate you sticking to the end of the video. And if you have any questions or comments, leave those in the comment section and I will certainly answer them. And also, I'm going to have everything linked in the description box that I used, with the exception of the wood. As I mentioned before, I'm not sure what type of wood it is. I'm not sure where I got the wood. It was just scrap pieces of wood that I've had lying around. But everything else will be listed and linked below. And also, I'm going to have a sneak peek coming up for you. So continue watching so you can see the next video that will be coming out. And as always, thank you so, so much for watching. I just cannot stress that and say that enough. I really, truly do appreciate it. And I hope everyone has a blessed day.